Gossip hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be talking about some books that are on my TBR. If you've been following my channel for the last 2 years, you probably know that my reading has significantly decreased to the point where I feel like I can say this for the first time in years, but I am in a reading slump. Horrifying, honestly. But I have been trying to slowly get myself back into reading more regularly, and thus I have tracked down a couple of books that I would like to read and feel like could really help me get back into the reading groove. And today's sponsor has given me 2 new books to add to my TBR, so thank you to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. Book of the Month is a monthly book subscription service that is all about trying to promote new and emerging authors while connecting readers with books that they will love. Every month, their team vets hundreds of new and upcoming releases to offer up a selection of a handful of books from various different genres to help you find your next favorite read. You can get your very first brand new hardcover book for only $9.99, which is like the best price you can find anywhere, and they have a risk-free skip policy so you can skip any month for any reason and you won't be charged. I have discovered so many books that I've absolutely loved through Book of the Month just because that was a book I've never heard of that was a choice for the month. So one of the books that I picked for this month's choices is The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. Lucy, like many of us, shares a lifelong love of books, and so when her favorite author of all time releases a new book, she's selected to compete alongside a few lucky others to win the one and only copy. And my other choice from Book of the Month was She Started It by Sean Gilbert. This is a thriller about a group of old friends who have reconnected due to an all-expenses-paid bachelorette party, but when they arrive to the remote island with no cell service, things go awry. My sister's bachelorette weekend is actually next weekend, so I'm particularly intrigued by this one. I'm truly a big fan of Book of the Month, so check them out in the description of this video. It really helps support my channel, and you can use the code SPLASH to get your very first book for only $9.99. So the first book on my back to reading TBR is technically not on my TBR because I am currently reading it, but it feels appropriate, and that is The Maid by Nida Prose. This is a mystery thriller that follows a hotel maid named Molly, and she has been working at the hotel for years. It is like her pride and joy to make rooms clean, and she is also grieving the recent death of her grandmother, who was her closest person in her life and caretaker. Molly's most notable character trait is that she has difficulty understanding social skills and obsessive compulsive tendencies, so she is very clearly quoted as autistic for me, but apparently that's never recognized in the book or by the author or publishers. And on a totally normal work morning, one day Molly discovers the dead body of a wealthy regular at the hotel, and because of her strange and abnormal demeanor, she becomes the prime suspect of the police and has to rely on friends that she didn't even know she really had at the hotel to help her get out of this mess. I started listening to the audiobook of this and I really enjoyed it so far. I haven't listened to a new audiobook in such a long time, and it has been very easy and engaging to pick up at different spurts whenever I feel the motivation. Surprisingly, I've had some difficulty finding out how the autistic and neurodivergent community feels about the representation in The Maid. It seems like some people feel that it's good, other people, the main concerns I see are that Molly is childish and it's very stereotypical, and of course it's problematic to have characters with identities that are never recognized on page. So it's been a fun read thus far. I'm definitely intent on finishing it and I can't wait to share my thoughts. The next book on my TBR is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, and this is a book that my friend Michael had been talking about like since even before it got released, about how excited he was for it and how much he enjoyed it. And it's been like low-key on my TBR, but I feel like since I've felt this new motivation to start reading again, it has definitely jumped to the top. So this is the story of an author named June. She is coming up on her debut year alongside another one of her friends who is also debuting, but June feels that her book is not going to get to the audience that she feels it deserves, because who wants to read about basic white girls? June's friend Athena dies in a freak accident that June witnesses, and June decides that this is her opportunity to steal her friend's finished book, which is pages about the stories of Chinese soldiers in World War I and publish it as her own. She even goes so far to rebrand herself as Juniper Song, an ethnically ambiguous author, and justifies her actions because she believes, well, these stories need to be told. June is desperate to protect the secret that led to her becoming a bestseller, but as time goes on and rumors and word seems to be spread about, it may be difficult for her to keep it in any longer. The plot reminds me of that Zoe Deutsch movie called I Am Not Okay, which I absolutely loved, and I also didn't realize how short it was. I thought this was a much bigger book, so I'm definitely excited to check this one out. The next book on my TBR is Margaret and the Mystery of the Missing Body by Megan Milks. Try saying that 10 times fast. So this is one of those books that you come across in a bookstore and know absolutely nothing about, and that makes it even the more exciting to read it. I was book shopping one day well over a year ago, and my friend Kaylee had found this book and came up to me and was just like, I feel like this is a book that would totally interest you, and she was absolutely right, so I immediately bought it. This story follows a girl named Margaret who at 12 years old had a detective club, an investigative club with a couple of her friends, solving mysteries and having a great time. And a couple of years later, when Margaret is in high school, the club is disbanded and she is not friends with these girls anymore. As is with the experience of many teenage girls in the 90s with difficulty adjusting to adolescence, Margaret develops an eating disorder, and when she enters treatment and is battling with her own recovery, she stumbles upon a new mystery involving a ghost and a hidden passageway that she is trying to solve. It is a queer and trans coming of age story. It apparently has a ton of 90s nostalgia, and it features themes of eating disorders and mysteries. Like, could there be a more perfect book made for me? I think not. It seems like a unique, adventurous, and relatable story. I haven't ever heard anyone talk about it. So if you have read this book, I'm super curious to hear your thoughts, but I will definitely be sharing mine once I get to it. Next up on my TBR is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1926 Shanghai. So our main characters are named Juliet and Roma. Juliet is a flapper and heir to the Scarlet Gang, whereas Roma is the heir to the White Flowers Gang, and Roma was Juliet's first love and also her first betrayal. There are rumors brewing in Shanghai that there is a monster causing chaos, and so the two gangs, including Juliet and Roma, must reunite to stop it. That's really all I know about this book. Like, I know it's a fantasy and I have no clue what makes this a fantastical Shanghai other than this mysterious monster. Like, do they have magical powers? Are they part magical creature? I do know that this is like a massively hyped book, and when I was kind of refreshing myself on why I want to read all of these books by reading reviews, I noticed there were a lot of negative reviews, which I feel like I had never heard about, because when this book came out, I feel like it was super hyped. And this actually is a book that I have attempted reading already. I have tried listening to the audiobook of this twice, and within the first 2 chapters, I have just lost all understanding of what I have read and what is going on, so I have determined the audiobook is not the right format for me to read this story in, but I think if I were to give it a chance physically, it could really be one that I enjoy. It seems like a lot of the things that I love in young adult, and actually, why do I feel like this is like also on that brink of YA and new adult? Clearly, I know nothing about this book. I just know that I want to read it. The next book on my TBR is No Bad Parts: Healing Trauma and Restoring Wholeness with the Internal Family Systems Model by Dr. Richard Schwartz. Dr. Richard Schwartz is the father of internal family systems therapy, which is a therapeutic modality often used in treating trauma, addiction, and other forms of mental health conditions. And it all comes back to this idea that we have a multi-part personality, that we have multiple different parts living inside of us that are informed by our beliefs and our experiences. Over time, these parts can become burdened, which comes from us casting judgment on them or wishing they would go away. And through the process of unburdening, where we connect and engage with these parts of ourselves, accept them as they are, and integrate within them, it creates and fosters healing within us. I really love IFS. It is a therapy treatment I'm super interested in becoming more proficient in, and I have a couple of books from Dr. Schwartz that I'm really excited to read, but I have combed through the pages of No Bad Parts. I've read a couple of chapters and used some of the exercises in this book with my clients, which have been very successful. What I love about this book is that it is definitely not entirely geared towards clinicians. Like, you don't have to be a therapist to read this book, and I actually think that anyone who has experienced difficulties internally or are struggling to make changes in their lives, struggling to accept themselves, I think that this is a book that so many people would benefit from. Not only is the theory explained in a very digestible way, but also most chapters come with various different activities you can do to practice interacting with your different parts. And I just think it's fantastic. I get super excited and bubbly when I talk about IFS because I think it is really revolutionary and like holds so much help for people that are willing and interested, because it is a little bit unconventional. But I just really love IFS. I'm excited to learn more and definitely super hyped to read all of No Bad Parts. Next up on my back to reading TBR is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. Who ever expected to see me putting a Sarah J. Maas book on my TBR again? Because it was definitely not me. If you've been here since like the olden days, you would know that Sarah J. Maas is an author that I read from for a really long time. I did like the ACOTAR series, at least the first two books. I didn't really like the third. And I gave Throne of Glass multiple tries up until the third book, and I just lose all understanding in Air of Fire, regardless if I'm reading it physically or audiobook. So just not a series for me. I also know that Sarah J. Maas is a very controversial author, but I just kind of figured I had written her off as an author I probably wouldn't read from again. And it wasn't until my friend Sarah told me that she had listened to the audiobook of Crescent City for some kind of reading vlog or challenge, and she was shook with how much she absolutely loved it. And I was shook myself because Sarah is also not a Sarah J. Maas girly. So having this as a recommendation from her sounded like really high praise. So this is another story that, like, I feel like the plot is just so big and complex and has so much world building in it itself that it's hard for me to grasp. Our main character's name is Bryce, and all of her friends are murdered in one fell swoop by a demon, and apparently that demon, or whoever the suspect is caught and in jail, but the killings are continuing. Our other main character's name is Hunt, and he is a fallen angel under the control of this group called the Archangels. And in order for him to win his freedom, he has to help Bryce find this demon and stop it. And naturally, they fall in love, I guess. Like, I feel like that could be added onto the end of any book that I recommend or want to read and still be valid. So everything about this book reads as high fantasy to me. Like, the cover, the title, even the plot feels much more like a high fantasy to me. And we all know that high fantasy is not my favorite and something I sometimes struggle to really get into. But because of all of the reviews of people saying how good it is and how much they didn't expect to like it, I feel like I fit into that category pretty well, and I'm very interested to see what I think of this one. And the last book on my TBR is one that I wouldn't say is necessarily as high up on my TBR as the rest of these, but it is a book I've been holding on to for a couple of years that just feels so unique. It's another one that I just ran across randomly in a bookstore and it really spoke to me, so I hope to read it someday. And that is Forward Me Back to You by Matali Perkins. This is another book that I've never heard anyone talk about, and I'm super curious to hear from people who have read it if they've enjoyed it. We have two main characters. The first is named Katina, and she is the reigning jiu-jitsu champion of Northern California, but she's having difficulty fighting off the secrets of her past. And our other main character, Robin, was adopted from an orphanage in India, and he is struggling to come to terms with not knowing about where he comes from, and that impacting him choosing a future for himself. The two of them meet in a very unlikely circumstance where they have both signed up for the same summer program to Kolkata in order to work with victims of human trafficking. So through the experience of learning the stories of these people, through helping them and getting to know one another, it helps them on their own independent journeys. So yeah, I don't really got much else to say about this book other than that. It just sounds like a really profound story. I feel like stories about human trafficking that are fiction-based, not like memoirs of people who have been victims and survivors of that, I feel like is super like not common. So that's part of why it really stood out to me. Also, this gorgeous cover, but it sounds like a special one. I am particularly picky about YA. In recent years, I used to just read everything, and now like it's really got to hit some special markers for me, and I feel like Forward Me Back to You does hit them, at least from what I can tell so far. Alrighty, so that is my list of books that are on my TBR, the books that I am hoping will help get me back into reading. I do like the idea of sharing a video of what it is like for me getting out of a reading slump, so if you guys are interested in a vlog of sorts like that, please let me know. And let me know what books are currently on your TBR, because clearly I am gunning to find some new ones. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for a new one. Bye!